Welcome to Bulletproof Veteran Podcast. Thank you for your service.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Bulletproof Veteran Podcast. We have a good one for you today. And, you know, I always love having people on who work from their life experience. And I think today's guest is the prime example of working from your life experience and using your own past to now help people and kind of give them the skills they need to be successful in life. And that's really what we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk a little bit about addiction. We're going to talk a little bit about PTSD. We're going to talk about something that I'm not too familiar with, but I'm going to be asking Charles here in a second about it, which is compound post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a term that I didn't really know until I started looking into it a little bit more. So we're going to talk about all of this, but really the focus and what I want you to kind of think about as we're talking is these are all life skills and ways to maximize your life and live the happiest life possible, no matter what you've been through in the past. So on the show today, we have author Charles Smith. He has a series of books, okay? And that's exactly what they are. It's a series. It's about life experience and about how to maximize that life. So Charles, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Excellent.
Glad to be on the show.
Well, like we always do, and in your case, I really want to do this, is we usually start the show off by hearing a little bit about the guest. And really that plays into everything that you've been doing is your past. So please tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, my name is Charles Smith. I'm a Army infantry veteran. I served from 1993 to 1996. I went to Cuba for 6 months when I was in the military. Never went overseas fighting in war, but I have had in Cuba a lot of riot control experience, hand to hand. And I also spent time at the desert in Texas, the border of Texas and Mexico, and guarding the border. And I can tell you that there's a vast amount of space over there that people can just come in anywhere.
Yes, as we're finding out over the past years, it's, immigration obviously is a topic in and of itself. But yes, the border, if you get stationed down there, is not an easy billet. Let's be honest.
No, not at all. Well, going a little bit backwards, I've had PTSD since I was 6 years old. My mother died when I was 6. And then I moved out to Texas and Arizona. My father moved me and my sister out there. Out there, I was a minority. Okay. I lived on a Navajo reservation. My father had a job as a cook out there. And I lived on the border of Mexico in a small town called Van Horn, Texas, where I was literally one of the only white kids in school. And kids being kids, I got picked on a lot for it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And at this point, a lot of people ask me if I'm prejudiced. And I say my longest relationship was with a woman that's half Puerto Rican and half Spanish, or half Puerto Rican and half Hawaiian.
Ah, okay. That's a mix right there.
Yeah. My son is dead, her son too. And she's also one of the people I trust most in this world. So no, I'm not prejudiced. But then I've lost over 20 different significant people in my life. From my uncle that raised me, to my grandparents, to one of my aunts a couple of years ago, to my cousin that battled addiction, and he was found probably 5 or 6 miles from here in the woods, and they had to do dental recognition to identify his body. He was put in the woods by someone. They put lime around his body, and he was there for 6 months. Me, an experienced PI, and another experienced PI, private investigator,
Mhm.
were looking for him for 6 straight months. Couldn't find him anywhere. A hunter found his body. He was walking his dog, and a hunter found his body.
Wow.
Yeah, but I've had PTSD since I was 6 years old, undiagnosed since I was 6 to probably 30, 35 or so. My uncle and my grandfather died a month apart, and that put me in a really dark depression.
Okay.
And I tried taking my life. I was carving on myself just to feel something other than what I was feeling. And I got kicked out of the place that I was at, so I was homeless. But um, that also put me in contact with the VA.
Okay.
So then the VA discovered that I had PTSD, and that I had PTSD even since I was 6 years old. And I believe that any diagnosis that you get is a good thing, because then you can figure out how to fight it.
Well, and it
Yeah,
validates you too. Because
yeah,
I'm
oh
sure you
yeah,
were
definitely.
feeling a lot of different things along the way, not knowing why you felt that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I've been told, oh, I have attention deficit disorder. Oh, I have this. Oh, I have that. I've seen many shrinks.
Mm-hmm.
And I was even a mute after my father died when I was 11, and I came back here to Massachusetts. My sister told me a couple of years ago that I was a mute for 6 months. I don't remember any of that,
Right.
but she told me, "Yeah, you didn't even talk to me." And she was my only sister, and I didn't even talk to her. And it's just I went through so much, and that's why I help out other people, because when I was homeless, I was on the streets of Boston. I was in shelters in Boston, Worcester, New Bedford, and I realized that I wasn't alone.
Right.
That's when I truly realized that I'm not alone. There's tons of other people that are hurting, and that's why I started doing what I'm doing. I started dedicating my life to learning all I can about PTSD, addiction recovery, because I'm also in addiction recovery since 1993.
Well,
Basic training being my detox.
yeah, I was just going to say, so you joined the military in 1993. Basically, you were at that time you were addicted to a couple different drugs, alcohol being one of them,
And
and
crack
you
cocaine.
detoxed in basic training.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
that is I remember basic training. Listen, I was Air Force, so our basic training. We're not going to compare the two. Let's not get into all that. Everybody, calm down out there. But listen, it wasn't easy. It wasn't like we were sitting in the backyard drinking Mai Tais.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I can imagine what it would feel like with the physical and mental sickness of addiction leaving your body while also doing the tasks of basic training.
Yeah.
Do, w- would you almost say that being able to focus on basic helped you with the detox, or was it like how I'm picturing it, like I want to run in the bathroom and throw up after
It
a
was
run
both.
because my body's going crazy?
It was both.
It was both. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. I was so skinny, they fed me double meals.
Wow.
Yeah, to bulk me up, because I was like, my upper arm was like my wrist. I know you
Huh.
can't see it, but my upper arm was like my wrist, and I was just so drawn out. It almost killed me, literally. But I pushed forward. I had a lot of other people in basic training that knew what I was going through, so they helped me along. Like I had one guy that kept doing push-ups with me every night, just to get me strong enough to pass the PT test.
Yeah, it's that brotherhood, that brotherhood and sisterhood in the military. We dog on each other. Nobody will make fun of you like, a fellow service member. But at the same time, no matter what, it always seems like we try to lift each other up the best that we can, or at least have the intention to do so.
Right, exactly.
And that's kind of leading into what you do now. Now, like you said, when you were on the streets of Worcester, when you were on the streets of Boston, you saw that you weren't by yourself. You saw that you aren't the only person struggling with addiction, struggling with homelessness, mental health issues,
Yeah,
PTSD, whatever it is, depression. You mentioned ADHD, something that depression and ADHD kind of go very hand in hand, especially diagnosis wise. And things can be misdiagnosed along the way because of that. And you see all these different people and you go, okay, we can work together and we can do something to help. So how did you get started actually helping people?
I started a nonprofit called Karma Investigations Inc.
Okay.
It's no longer active, but that was the beginning. And that was supposed to be like a PI and bodyguard service, because a lot of veterans were coming out of war, and the war was coming home with them.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was doing with Karma was protecting the families if need be, but also looking in. A lot of the PI part was looking into what's going on with the veteran. How can we help the veteran and keep the family together?
Okay.
Yeah. And then that started into running programs for different places around here, addiction recovery and veterans services. And because I had problems getting the funding for something that's potentially dangerous.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did that, and then I started running programs. And then I stopped running programs a few years into it because I wasn't making enough to live on having my son.
Okay.
So the information that I had in my programs, my first 3 books, my book on PTSD, my book on self-protection, and my book on positive thinking, are programs that I ran for these different places.
And it was interesting when I was kind of looking through your books, the self-protection one kind of jumped out because it was self-protection in the home, outside, and in school.
Right.
And it kind of stands out from the rest when you look at it from a title perspective, just because the other ones are all like coping skills, addiction, PTSD, mental health, all that kind of stuff, life-changing to success. Your newest one, acceptance of loss, death of a family member or somebody close to you. And then there's this protection one. And I'm like, at first, I was kind of like, well, that doesn't fit. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, actually, that's paramount. Because if you don't feel secure and protected, how can you tackle all these other issues that you may be going through? That's what one of the hardest things for homeless veterans is, they lack that security to then now deal with some of their other issues. They have to only worry about security. So if you don't have that, you can't do any of the other stuff.
Yeah, and that's why that's my number 1 book, my first book.
Right.
Exactly what you just said, and you're not the first one to question that.
Right. Yeah. When you look at it, you're kind of like, what? Why is that there?
Yeah. But then I'm like, you being a woman in a domestic abuse situation, or a veteran that's been down and out and low self-esteem, they need to build up their confidence. And how I built up my confidence was I started doing Shaolin Kempo karate.
Okay.
And that built up my confidence. And then I started branching out to other things. But yeah, you have to be confident in your world around you and feel safe in your world around you for any of it to work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that hierarchy of need. You know what I mean? You can't worry about mental health if you're worried that somebody's going to kick the shit out of you in a home. if you're
Exactly.
if you're in a shelter or something like that, or like you
Yeah.
said, in prime example is a domestic violence situation. If you're going home to where the trauma is coming from,
Yeah.
you can't fix it until the trauma stops.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
I like that you kind of threw that in and you started with that, because I think it's important that confidence, security, those things are your foundation, and then we
Yeah.
build up from there.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yep.
So you wrote those 3 books. You started with those. Now, are those self-published?
They are. All my books are self-published.
And it's a lot easier nowadays. I mean, I kind of laugh because anybody who's going to the big, Penguin and all these other, it's almost not necessary anymore, because you can go right to Amazon, self-publish on Amazon. They put it out on Kindle, they put it out paperback, and it's right on the Amazon website. Boom, boom, you're good to go.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it
There's
makes it a lot easier,
Amazon. There's Draft to Digital.
right?
I have my books on both Amazon and Draft to Digital. And with Draft to Digital, I have like Apple, I have Kobo, I have Nook, I have all these other ebook possibilities. So
Right.
people have a lot of other avenues to be able to read my books.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah.
So you're, like I said, your 3 first books, security, addiction, and PTSD, correct? Were the first 3?
Yes. Positive thinking, addiction, not addiction, positive thinking,
Uh-huh.
uh, PTSD, and the self protection.
And the self-protection. Now,
Yeah.
when you were writing these, I mean, obviously you're still in recovery now, because that's a process that is your whole, it lasts your whole life. But
Oh yeah.
where were you in your recovery process yourself while you were writing these books?
That's a good question. I was when I started doing my books, when I started running the programs
Mm-hmm.
that came with the books, I was really in the beginning stages of learning about my post traumatic stress and learning about this. So even though I was in addiction recovery for a while, I was in recovery from PTSD and all that. I was fresh in that at that time.
At the start of that, and
Yeah.
so that leads into this term that I found on your website. Started looking into it a little bit, of this compound post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
Explain a little bit the difference between, say, PTS and compound post-traumatic stress.
Compound post traumatic stress is when you have multiple triggers.
Okay.
Like me, I was in a tank explosion. The turret blew up as I was in my Bradley in my driver's seat. My gunner and my BC were blinded for 6 months and had terrible powder burns on them. That's one form of PTSD. I hear loud bangs now and I jump.
Okay.
I see a flash and I jump, Even though I know a bunch of different coping skills, I still go through it. Death is another one. Crowds is another one. I think that stems from the camps at Getmo,
Okay.
Cuba. And yeah, I just have multiple different stressors, triggers.
Okay.
And that's when it turns into compound PTSD. Like PTSD is just you've gotten into a car accident or something that almost killed you or something that deeply affected you, like death. And you have PTSD from that. I
Right.
have PTSD from multiple areas of my life.
So
And
you
it's
have to
compounded.
attack this from a different way than somebody who maybe just had a car accident, like you
Yeah,
said.
yeah.
So you have to come
And
at
I've
this.
huh?
You have to come at this from all different angles, because you have different things that can trigger a PTSD response.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Okay.
And I just have so many different triggers, like the tank explosion, all that. But that means that I also have to work it to a different angle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would almost say, and please stop me if I'm assuming, that a lot of our veterans and a lot of our military would fall more into the compound post-traumatic stress than say the civilian population with a single occurrence, like you said, maybe some type of a domestic violence situation or a car accident or something like that. When we have our veterans, they have something that happened to them during their service. Yeah. Maybe they had multiple things happen during their service. Then they get out and they have an addiction issue, or if they are homeless or at risk, they have something happen in the shelter, or they have. So I think it lends itself to have that compound type of scenario, because there's so many things that can happen due to the way we kind of put ourselves out there and where we are in the world.
Yeah. And not to talk bad about the VA or anything like that.
Oh, you can go ahead and talk bad about the VA all you like. That I have no problem with.
That. But I'm going through trying to get 100% service connected.
Okay. Right? Very difficult.
And they the way that the VA looks at PTSD is, and this is a doctor that explained it to me, a doctor that they sent me to. He's like, you have compounded PTSD from your civilian life and your veteran's life. And your PTSD is compounded because of your veteran's life. But they see it as civilian Charles Smith and specialist Charles Smith, when it's not. And for all the veterans that are out there listening right now, PTSD is PTSD is PTSD. If you have multiple forms of PTSD, multiple triggers, multiple stressors, it's compounded. And don't let anybody tell you different. Right. Now it's all just, I'm battling that myself right now with the VA. I'm like, your doctor even said that my PTSD is compounded because of my military service, and you're only giving me 30% service connected because you think that I went through this and this, and none of it matters. But it does. Right. And to all the veterans out there, it does matter.
Well, yeah, because like you said, if you just go by the kind of diagnosis of what you're going through, it doesn't matter that something happened before your military service. What happened in your military service and as a veteran, post-military service, all of those things enhance what you might have already had to be dealing with because of your childhood civilian life prior to the military. So why would we separate the two? You're not going to treat it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're going to treat PTSD as PTSD or compounded PTSD. You're not going to treat it, this part of your life doesn't matter, but this part happened to you when you were in the military, so that matters.
Right. Listen, the VA, I'll say this. They have an impossible job. They're underfunded, underserved, and they are asked to do something that they're set up to fail, basically. Now, having said that, they fail in a lot of areas, not because they're set up to fail, because they just want to run it the way they want to, and they don't look at people as people. They look at a chart, and it says, well, Jason had a heart attack, so he gets 20%. Or Jason had a heart attack. He can't show me a piece of paper that said that he had a heart issue while he was in. It doesn't matter that he went to a base that had a chemical that may have caused it. Well, you can't prove it, so it's not service connected. Sorry, you don't get anything.
Right.
So I'll give the VA a little bit because they are underfunded, they are understaffed, they are tasked with a very difficult job that unfortunately our government doesn't think is that important. I mean, they really just don't. They don't take care of the veterans when they get home.
Right.
It's a tale as old as the military. But they also get in their own way plenty, so they don't get too much of an excuse as far as I'm
Oh, yeah.
concerned.
I work with a group called Veterans Insider that is helping me get my service connected.
Mhm.
And what I told them is I think that I'm a certified peer specialist.
Okay.
I don't know if you know what that is.
I don't. I was going to ask you what exactly
Okay.
is that?
Peer meaning, we have the same thing. And what that means is like I had to go through this training because I have mental health issues with my PTSD and my depression and anxiety. And that allows me to help other people. Like I've helped people with autism, I've helped people with PTSD and a number of different mental health conditions.
Mhm.
And I think that teaches you so much about PTSD and all the other mental health conditions that the people that are doing the ratings and stuff, they should be required to at least go through that
You would
that
think.
training, so they can be more empathy,
Mhm.
sympathetic. They can know what it's like because I'm sure a lot of them, they look at a book, okay, this is what PTSD is, and then they just do what they're gonna do
Right.
instead of living it.
Yeah. As
You
my
know?
my wife is she went to school for mental health counseling, and we were talking one day, and I was telling her about a time that I sat down with a mental health professional, and he pulled out, this was when I was much younger, and he pulled out that big blue book. There's a name for it,
Yeah.
the DSM something for whatever.
DSM.
Yeah, exactly. And
Mhm.
and my wife was like, he pulled the book out in front of you? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, I would have got up and walked out right then and there because you're literally telling me that you're just looking for something that fits into this book, into this mold. You're not listening to me. You're not listening to me as a person and what I might be going through.
Right.
Like, that's
Exactly.
crazy.
Oh yeah. Yep. And I guarantee you, if you look in that book and you read the whole thing, there's not one person that doesn't have at least one thing in there.
Oh, of course.
You know?
Of course. We're human beings.
Yeah, yeah. Because there's every single I read that before in college. Because I have a human services certificate. Human services degree and a
Okay.
certificate. Yeah. And I looked at that in college and yeah, anybody,
You,
the president, the lowest person on the chain,
Yep.
we all have something in that book,
yeah. Well,
some sort of mental health.
whenever you put something in writing,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you know this, having written the books and going through some of the diagnosis and the skills needed for each diagnosis. If you put it into writing, there's somebody that can fit you into that if you really want to. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Because we joke around all the time that like ADHD, like I said, well, there's a lot of symptoms to ADHD that every person goes through if you think about it enough. That doesn't mean you have ADHD.
Right.
That just
Exactly,
means you get hyper focused on something. There's a huge difference between the mental illness and a symptom of that a lot of people have.
Yes. Yeah. I agree.
So getting back to the book. So after you wrote the first 3, then where did you kind of take it from there?
Well, then my cousin died.
Okay.
The one that was in an addiction, and I started working in a bunch of different places here as a case manager and an addiction recovery specialist to try to learn more about the world that he was in. And after I did that for a few years, I wrote the book on addiction recovery. and that's my fourth book. And I call that the first book that I ever wrote as a book, because the first three were books that I wrote as programs.
Right. More like almost like workbooks at that point.
Yeah. So now I wrote four books, because I have seven out. And but I just spent a lot of time on that book, and a lot of people that I met in addiction recovery that have 1 year or more time clean.
Mm-hmm.
I had them put their stories in the back of the book. So
Very
you
cool.
actually know, so you actually know that it works. There's proof right in the book that it does work. Addiction recovery does work.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that. Anytime that you have personal stories along with, say a self-help type book or just a mental health book, it humanizes it. First of all, it doesn't make it a bunch of just jargon and programs and things like that. It makes it, hey, listen, this is what we've done, and this is the result that we have, and this is the proof in the pudding is that this works.
Yeah,
these techniques work because here I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm in recovery. I'm a year clean. I'm 2 years clean, 5 years clean, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Now, are most of those individuals in some type of like you lay more like a 12-step that we hear about so much, or is this more of a new way of dealing with addiction and looking at addiction?
A lot of them are in the 12-step program.
Okay.
Some of them are in smart recovery, but a lot of them, they're just working on it like me on a daily basis.
Okay.
You live and breathe recovery. And it does work because I'm living proof myself. I mean, I've been so down and out that I tried taking my own life, and I've struggled. The one thing that I didn't do through all the stuff since 1993 is go back and use.
Wow.
Like my homelessness, like my cousin dying, my aunt dying a couple of years ago, all this. And people always ask me, like, did you want to go back and use? I'm like, no. I didn't want to go, and that's why I didn't, because I didn't want to.
Right.
But at the same time, and I think this is important to voice, is since 1993, all that time, and I still won't go into like a crack house or something, any situation where I know that somebody is going to be using what would trigger me to use. I still won't do it because
So you remove
I don't
yourself from those situations.
Yeah, because I don't know what I would end up doing. So I just remove myself. You got to remove your world from the whole situation. The thing that triggers you, you got to move your world from that.
Right.
Like my cousin is a perfect example. His brother wanted to move him, I think it was to Florida or California, one of those addiction recovery places out there, because he didn't know anybody there. And he could start his whole life over in a strange place, but a place that he has no connections to what he would use.
Right. So those triggers, if they're people, if some of the triggers were people, you're getting away from that.
Yeah.
But that's the thing about addiction that's so crazy. Like, I quit smoking, and not to compare it, but nicotine is a very addictive substance. I quit smoking in 2006. I still have dreams about smoking. Like, I'll wake up in the middle of the night thinking that I smoked.
Yep. It's
like
funny you say that because
it's crazy.
Yeah. Like I quit maybe 7 years ago smoking.
Okay.
And just the other night I had that kind of dream.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I didn't smoke. So.
Well, and it's so much like my wife will ask me, she's like, do you miss smoking cigarettes? Because I smoked for so long. And she'll be like, do you miss it? I'm like, yes, I do. I don't want to smoke now, but God, I miss it. There was something about having my cigarette with my cup of coffee or my beer or whatever the case may be. I was full-fledged addicted to cigarettes, full-fledged, you know what I mean? And yes, I still miss it. But again, I don't allow myself to have it. I don't want to go back. So I have to take myself out of situations that would lend itself to that. I don't put myself in those type of situations.
Exactly. Like my best friend smokes,
Mhm.
and he'll smoke right near me, and he's like, "Does that bother you?" I'm like, "No, it don't really,"
Yeah.
because I got to the point where it disgusts me.
Okay.
Like even if I'm driving in my truck and there's somebody going the other way and they're smoking a cigarette, or somebody in front of me smoking a cigarette, and I smell it, I'm like, window up. I don't want to smell it because I don't know how I did it all those years. I really don't.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I'm the same way. I don't know. I don't know how. I know I did.
Yeah.
But it's the truth. It's crazy how the brain works and how even towards the end when I was still smoking, I was like, I don't even want this anymore. Like, but I'm doing it.
Yeah.
It's
And going back to addiction, that's the way it is for all of us in addiction. Recovery is, my son and his sister constantly asked me to quit smoking.
Okay.
And I kept on smoking. Dad, please quit. And I kept on doing it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't quit until I wanted to quit.
Yeah.
And it's the same for people that are in addiction recovery. Like being a caseworker, I've run into so many people, military and civilian, that have addiction problem, and even though their kids, they have the kids taken away from them, the kids are asking them to quit this and that, but they keep on going back because they don't want it.
Right.
And you got to want it as much as you want the breath that you're breathing.
Yeah, it has to be you. It has to come from you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how do you? So you're obviously you wrote the book about addiction, and you're working in these, as a case manager and all that. How do you help, say, a veteran get to the realization that they want to better their lives? Because that seems to be the hardest part, is to get, because like you said, how are you going to help them if their own son or daughter who's begging them to do it, they don't want to do it for them?
Yeah.
What are you doing that's trying to get them to realize at that point?
Yeah. All you can do is show them like my life, you can have this and this and this if you just give this up. You can have your kids, you can have your house, you can have your life back if you just give this up. And a lot of people just need to hear it.
Like,
a lot of talks that I talk about, I bring up my son. Back like 15, I think it was 15 years ago, when I was in my deepest depression, I tried to kill myself. Now I have a 9-year-old son. You do the math. If I succeeded back then, I wouldn't have had my kid.
Of course. Yeah.
He wouldn't be alive.
Yes.
Because I chose to make a decision like that.
Right.
Everything we do in life has consequence. But a lot of people, I just try to, I give them the book, like my PTSD book. Like, here, there's a lot of information in here that will help you. If you choose to read it, that's up to you.
Right. Yeah, you can't force somebody. They have to take some ownership. There has to be some level of personal responsibility to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that goes back to, I was talking last week about the idea of the broken veteran and how I hate that. I hate the idea that if you struggle with mental health, if you struggle with addiction, you're this broken stereotype veteran, down on their luck, homeless vet from a movie and the whole deal. And I hate that because I think veterans are some of the strongest people that I've ever met. Now, granted, I'm around a lot of them, and I might have a bias in that, but generally speaking, our experiences lend us to be very strong people. We've been through a lot, and addiction, mental health, personal issues, they're all just the next hurdle that I really do feel like veterans can get over. And I hate when we stereotype that they need to be coddled or they're broken and they can't be helped, and it's too much for them, and we need to get them into a hospital, and that's the only thing that'll help them. And that might be, maybe you might have to go into the hospital, but I like the idea of the veteran kind of pulling themselves up and
Me too.
And having that ownership.
Yeah, me too. Like I worked as a peer specialist for a place called Advocates.
Okay.
And working with veterans and civilians alike with PTSD, depression, anxiety. The woman that went up, the teacher that went up in the space shuttle.
Yes.
Her brother was one of my clients.
Oh, okay.
Because of that death, he was severely depressed. And I helped him through depression, but they wanted to put him in a hospital. Just, put him on a psych ward, let the medication do its thing. I'm like, no. I want to help him. I want to get him acclimated back into the world. I want to show him that there's life after death. And there is. There's life after anything that we go through.
And that kind of leads into the most recent book that you wrote, and it's unfortunately a topic that you know too much about, having lost, like you said, 20 close friends and family over the years that are there. And when we say 20 friends and family, listen, I have a huge family. I've lost 20, 30, 40. I can't even count. That's not to say that those were people that were intimate in my life and directly affected my life in a major way. They were distant relatives, things like that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the loss of somebody that impacted you, that was a huge part of your existence. So, like I said, unfortunately, you know all too much about this, and you wrote this last book, the acceptance of loss.
Yeah, Operation Footprints.
So, Operation Footprints. Please tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I got the footprints because I don't have a copy of it, but if you see the cover of the book, it's got a dog on it.
Yes. Yep.
And how we made the cover, we darkened that a little bit to make the words out more. But the original copy of that it's a picture of my family's house on a lake, like 30 miles down the road. But the picture has somebody walked on there with water, and you can see the footprints on the dock.
The glistening of each foot.
Yeah, and it could be anybody that went down to the camp. We call it the camp.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that went down to the camp and is no longer here. Yeah, so that's why I was like, I want to do that. And that prayer, the footprint prayer.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. I put those two together, and that's why I named it Operation Footprints. I have an operation name to all of my books. But
that's that military style, you kind of have to.
Oh yeah, definitely.
but the idea of loss is such a recurring theme for people after they get out of the military, whether it's the loss of a friend, loss of that mission that they had when they were in the military. You know, even if they didn't, even if their friends from the military haven't passed on, you don't see them anymore. You know, you lose touch with them. That idea of loss is such a hardship for veterans that separate out of the military or have been through a traumatic experience in the military, lost a buddy in battle, or through suicide or addiction or any of these different things. I think it's important that you wrote this book to address that, because I think it's something
Yeah.
that we all deal with.
Yeah, and I felt this is a perfect time because of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
because of all the people that a lot of us, lost. I've lost just in the past couple of years. I've lost a few different people, not as insignificant or significant, but I lost my aunt. It was very significant. She was like a one of the mother figures in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I lost a good friend to both of them to cancer. But we've all. I think I was reading something. We lost, like, in the United States alone, we lost like 700,000 people.
Yeah, we're right
Due to
we're
COVID.
right around that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like we just passed our mark or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know a few people that have died of COVID too, though. So I was like, I've because that's one of my deepest triggers, loss.
Mm-hmm.
I've wanted to write that book, but I put it off. I'm like, well, this is a better book to write, so I'll write this one. I did that a couple times, but then, yeah, that one just last year, I'm like, this is it. This is a time to do that.
Yeah. Well, and so
and
many people are grieving all by themselves because of the COVID situation.
yeah,
We lost a friend of the family, and like you couldn't even do the normal wake. Nobody could be there at the hospital when the person passed away. You know, it's such a unique time in history that we're not able to grieve in the way that we normally would, and that
yeah,
is very dangerous. Very dangerous.
yeah. Like my good friend Berto that died, right around the same time that my aunt did. I couldn't go to his because it was like, you know extended family and family only. Like very very few people went to it,
Mm-hmm.
to the wake and the services. And yeah, I wanted to go to that, but I couldn't. And I think a lot of that, like, when that sort of thing happens, it's harder to overcome the feeling of loss because you weren't able to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Like my father, like when he died when I was 11 years old, I had the opportunity to hold his hand and say goodbye. But a lot of people don't have that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Currently, no, they do not.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
You know, and like you said, the way we grieve and the process that we go through, there is a healing that happens if you're able to do it the way that you would like. You know what I'm saying? Whether you hold the person's hand, say goodbye, you go have a drink at the bar with your buddy afterwards, or whatever the case may be, if that's the way that you wanted to grieve and celebrate that person's life. More and more you see people that they don't want to have wakes or anything like that. They want you to go out and have a more of a celebration of
Yeah,
their life. That's becoming more and more popular. But all of these things, unfortunately, right now, a lot of people aren't able to do it because of the world we're in.
right,
And then
exactly.
you're starting a slippery slope for each one of those individuals, because they're left with this hanging over their head, this loss.
Yeah, yep. And with that comes guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Like when my father died and I had to come back to Massachusetts, I was rebellious as all hell
Mm.
towards the people that were trying to help me out. Because how dare you take over my mother's spot or my father's spot And that happened until my grandfather and my uncle died. And then I felt so much guilt because of that. Because I wasn't able to like show them how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you were young and you had to have so much anger inside you
Oh yeah.
of
Yeah.
just your situation in general.
Yeah. I mean, me and my sister came back from Texas, and a lot of people considered us broken
Mm,
because of the lifestyle that we had down there.
right.
We lived in a little shack, probably the size of the space you're in now, and we had a booth from a restaurant for a couch. We had a cardboard box for a TV stand. It was the lowest as you can possibly be. And me and my father slept in the same bed, a mattress without a box. And my uncle flew down to get us, and he left everything behind because he just said it was just too much. And he took what he seen down there to his grave
Wow.
because he said it was just too much to even talk about.
To even process, to even
Yeah.
relate. Yeah, I think you talk about it on your website that when your uncle came back and he spoke to your grandfather, I think the only thing he said is that it was an illivable situation.
Yeah. Yep. Most definitely. And I like school. If I wanted to go, like the reason that I was home with my father the day that he died is because I woke up and I seen him making coffee, and I'm like, something's not right. I had like this sixth sense, something's not right. So I stuck my finger down my throat in the bathroom, threw up, and I said, "Dad, I'm not feeling good. I got to stay home." And then we spent like a half a day together before I had to bring him into the hospital with my neighbor.
Mm.
My neighbor drove us to the hospital, but I had to bring him there, and then he passed on. But yeah, I was just like, I didn't know what to do. It was, I don't know. But a
It's
lot
a,
of people,
it's a horrible
huh?
thing.
No, yeah. But like, if I didn't want to go to school, I didn't have to go to school. So I come back here, and my aunt, my uncle, and my grandparents are trying to get me into school, and I'm so far behind the other kids, it's not even funny. And I spent my time all through high school not giving a crap because I was so far behind. I just, and then I go into college for human services, and I get the human service award, and I get 4.0 on my GPA because I wanted to do it.
Right.
You
Goes
know?
back to what we were talking about. You have to want to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I wanted to do it, I was the top of the class. But when I didn't want to do it all through high school, like I told my kid, I passed high school with an F. I'm always on him for doing better in school because I didn't have that.
Right.
I missed out on that because of how I was. Nobody's fault but the circumstance.
Right.
But yeah.
It's an amazing story. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible that you had to go through that, and it's horrible that any child would have to go through that type of loss, those types of situations. You talked about moving to, I think it was 10 different houses in 11 years.
Yep.
I mean,
We moved from, I don't know if I'm going to get all these right.
it's a lot.
Yeah, we moved from the next town over to my father owned multiple nursing homes, and he owned land all over Worcester. And Worcester is one of the biggest cities in New England, second biggest, to give you a reference. But one day he lost it all, lost everything. The house, my grandfather had to build a duplex So me and my mother and my father and my sister had somewhere to live because we were going to be homeless. Because everything just went poof. Nobody knows what happened. I think my grandfather does, but he took it to his grave.
Right.
And then after my mother died, in the duplex, we moved to Southwick, Mass, and then to Connecticut, and then to Arizona, then back to Texas. Back there, we bounced back and forth from there a couple times, Arizona and Texas.
Right.
Yeah, but then we finally, me and my sister moved back here in the house that I'm actually in now. We moved back to this house.
And that's your aunt. That was your aunt and uncle, correct?
Yeah, yep. My grandparents were my legal guardians,
Okay.
but they lived next door. They didn't have room in their house for me and my sister. So my aunt and my uncle took us in.
Hey, listen, there's a lot to be said that it seems like as difficult a situation you were in, you had family that cared.
Yeah.
You had family that cared, and there's a lot to be said for that, because nowadays it seems like it happens all too often. People just write off difficult situations, and that couldn't have been an easy decision for your aunt and uncle to make, to take in an 11-year-old, and you said your sister was a couple years younger.
Yeah, a couple of years older.
A couple of years older. I'm sorry, I had the opposite way. But so okay, an 11 and 13-year-old. Oh yeah, you're just going to come and live with me now, but that's the right thing to do. Is say, yeah, we're just gonna. It's not the kid's fault. We're just going to make it work, and we're going to step up.
Yeah, the way that my uncle was, he was such a good-hearted man. The way that he was like, yeah, and he's not even our blood. My aunt is our blood.
Okay.
My uncle wasn't our blood, but he's like, yeah, they're moving back here into this house without a second thought.
Yeah. Now I could see why when your uncle and your grandfather passed away, it was such a not to say that it wouldn't have been difficult anyway, but I think in your situation, that loss is just compounded and compounded because of what they were and what they meant to you.
Yeah. Yep.
So currently so the latest book just came out just recently, correct? It was it was at the end of 2020?
It was earlier this year.
All right, so 2021, beginning of 2021. Yeah. So the new book came out. What are you working on currently? Because I'm sure you're not just sitting around having coffee in the morning.
Oh, no. I'm putting all my books as audiobooks.
Not an easy task.
No. But I have this brilliant lady that is helping me out, Bailey Hamilton. I found her on a site called ACX, which is through Amazon.
Okay.
And she's helping me out, doing an amazing job with the books. And we're going to, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have the PTSD book, the addiction recovery book, and the self-protection book out on audiobook through Audible and I think iTunes.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And
that
process that's a tough process.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. In on my book, 10 Homes to 11 Years, I actually had a negative comment by someone.
Mm-hmm.
They said that they read the book and they were disappointed because it ended. And that's only the first 10 years of my life.
Because that was like your kind of memoir, early childhood memoir, we'll call it.
Yes, yep. And what I planned on doing was putting one out for every 10 years of my life. And I haven't done the second one yet. So now, because of that lady, Rosie, I think her name was, but because of what she put on Amazon about my book, that's forcing me to get up and write the next one.
And do that continuation so you can kind of almost prove her wrong and say, well, it didn't end. It just paused for a second.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. But I always I always listen to my readers. And I always listen to the people that I'm trying to support, because I don't do everything right. You know, there's a ton that I do wrong.
Don't we all?
But no, I know. But I just want to, I want to please the people that are supporting me, because they don't have to read my book. They don't have to listen to what I have to say. But if they do and it helps them, then I want to be able to give them the best possible, experience that I can with what I do.
Well, that's the whole point of it all. The whole point of what you're doing and your series, the life experience series, is to help people. So if you're not listening to the people that you're trying to help, are you really helping them? No, probably not.
Exactly.
So you have to kind of keep that feedback coming and then adjust as you continue to write and continue to do lectures and all of that. And I know 2020 and even 2021 has screwed up the lecture circuit and the ability to do programs and groups and things like that. But that will end sooner or later, hopefully. And you can kind of get that part of it back, because I'm sure that feedback that you get from lecture and group feeds back into your next book and your writing and your style and all of that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And like when I was running programs, when I was a case manager running programs in addiction recovery and places, I got so much out of doing that. Just people coming up to me and shaking my hand, saying thank you, saying, what you told me saved my life, or this or that. And that helps me more than any coping skill that I could possibly imagine.
I'm sure that has to be such an uplifting thing to get that back. Almost in a little bit of a selfish way. Hey, listen, there's no problem with being selfish, because if you're not taking care of you, you can't take care of others. So It's fine to be selfish, especially when you are trying to help people. But yeah, that has to be such a positive thing in your life as you go through your recovery and continue, your kind of process of staying away from drugs, alcohols, all these different things. Yeah. That constant, almost affirmation is important.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So where can we get more information? Where can we get the books? And what do we have on the horizon that you know about that is going to be going on outside of the audio books and all of that?
Lifelongexperience.net is where you can get the books. And that gives you the avenue towards Amazon and Drafted Digital.
Okay.
Each book has a page. And it's got information on that. And because of 2020 and 2021, you're actually the first podcast interview that I've had in a while.
Okay.
So
I'm honored.
You're welcome. So I have one more coming up, another podcast. Let's see if I can find the guy's name. But I'm trying to get a different podcast so I can do stuff from home.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, if you or anyone listening knows anywhere that they would like to hear me on their podcast, let me know.
Definitely.
Go on to lifelongexperience.net or at lifelongexperience on Instagram, or Arthur Charles Smith, and you can get a hold of me and let me know, hey, I have this podcast that I would love to hear you on. Because I've reached out to a lot, but not a lot of them are returning.
Yeah, it's a tough game, and the thing that's happening now is that because of this virtual option that we have now, where you don't have to be in studio, it's it's a blessing and a curse. Now there's so many people that want to do interviews and stuff like that. It's kind of crazy. It's a little weird. Because you would think it would almost be the opposite, that it would have kind of shut things down. But now people aren't going on TV. They can't do lectures. They can't do things like that. So they're reaching out to the podcast because it's the one avenue left that you have this flexibility.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a great way to get your information out.
Yeah. I'm going to start doing my own channel on Instagram. And I had done YouTube in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start doing that again.
Yeah, I think there's a link on your website for some of the older YouTube videos and stuff like that.
Yep. What I plan on doing is like taking a page out of any one of the books, reading it, and then going more in depth. I what's his name? The really famous podcast.
Joe Rogan?
No, the other one. Let's see if I can. I can't think of his name right now. But I have a horrible memory, probably because of the PTSD and whatnot. But he reads a book. He takes a book like Musashi's book, Book of Five Rings. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
I've heard of the book. I haven't read it or listened or anything, but I've heard of the title.
Or The Art of War.
Of course, Sun Tzu, yes.
Yeah, yep. He reads that, and then he goes more in depth about what he thought of the book. So I think that's what I'm going to be doing with my own books, is like reading a page and then talking about it more in depth.
Yeah, that's a great companion, especially for somebody who is looking for more information. Pick up the books, do all of that. But if they have some type of, even if you do like a live session and you could do almost a virtual book tour with it, and you can read a passage and then talk about it, and somebody say, hey, I have a question about that. I was reading it and this is the way I took it, but I'm not sure if that's what you meant or what your experience was.
I would love to do that too. Like you can do that on Instagram.
Yes. Yep.
People have a question right there. They can ask, and I will do live sessions on the YouTube channel too. Yeah,
it's a great way to get, like I said, get your information out there and do more and more, and listen, reach more people, because in your business, the more people you reach and the more people you help, the better off we all are going to be. So we want you to get out there and help people, as much as we can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I want.
Of course.
It makes everything from my mother's death to today mean something.
Right.
If I'm helping others with the information that I have. Like a lot of my life, I felt like I was God's guinea pig. Like, let's see if he can handle this.
Right.
You know? But now I'm like, I'm looking at it like I don't owe the world. The world doesn't owe me for anything. But I owe the world because I'm still here.
Yeah, you're still kicking, and you have something now to give back to everybody else.
Yeah. Like my sister had something funny on Facebook the other day. She had something with a T-shirt of a band. And I woke up like, I wore my Journey T-shirt to bed, and I woke up faithfully or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, I'm just glad I woke up.
Yeah. Listen, more people need to think like that, because I think too many people wake up in the morning and think of all the bad things. I had 3 heart attacks last year. I'll tell you what, every day I wake up, that's a great day for me. I'm doing good.
Definitely.
I'm doing that. I'm having an awesome time, because it changed my outlook on things. You don't take advantage of it. You don't take it for granted, I should say. You don't take it for granted. The simple act of just waking up in the morning, have a little smile on your face, and tackle that day.
Yeah. Like when I was in the homeless situation or depression or whatever, anything that went on the day before, I left the day before.
Mm.
Anything negative that went on in my life the day before, I woke up and it was a new day. That took a long time to think like that. But yeah, I don't like I got into an argument yesterday with someone that a stupid argument.
Mhm.
But I woke up, I was thinking about it, but I'm like, you know what? It's not going to bother me today.
Right.
It's just something that happened and I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's how you move forward. You just let things go. No, don't let everything go. Don't let people walk on you and stuff like that. But if it's going to rent space in your head or your heart, don't let it. Just keep walking, keep moving forward.
Choose what you allow to impact your life as you move forward.
Exactly. Yeah. Pick your battles.
Yep.
Too,
Yeah. For sure. It's kind of a cliche, but it's such a true one.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, Charles, I've had a blast talking to you. It's been a lot of fun. It's an eye-opening story as far as your life experience and how you've turned that into something outside of just yourself now. So I've really enjoyed listening to it, and you should be applauded for taking the stance that you're going to use your life to help other people. And I think more and more people need to do that. So from this show, Bulletproof Veteran Podcast, we appreciate what you do every day.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It was great being on the show. It makes me want to do more.
Good. Get out there and do more, man.
I'm going.
Definitely want you to. But we're looking forward to more and more books from you, the audio books, the website, YouTube, everything. Everybody, make sure you get over there and you check all this stuff out, please. And again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're welcome. Go on to lifelongexperience.net and don't give up hope.
Great message. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.